like to share with you the nature of the mystical experience today. And essentially what a mystical experience is, and it reveals what the spiritual path is as well, is that for a moment you have a moment of clarity. You see reality more clearly. And it's usually fleeting. So a crisis in your life can reveal this. A spiritual awakening, which sometimes stems from a crisis. It can be spontaneous sometimes. Shamans use drugs to awaken the spiritual experience. Meditation can bring these. Essentially, you see reality crystal clear, and then suddenly, maybe a few minutes later, hours later, you start to have your normal consciousness again. So you got a glimpse. This is what your evolution, your spiritual evolution is. So what prevents us from seeing this all the time are the filters that we see reality with. So essentially, all the conditioning, all the belief systems, and all the ways we really say no to life. So, for example, think something like anxiety, stress, panic attacks, and then even on more subtle realms, you go to projections in ego, in your ego self, and in the ways you start to impose your belief systems onto what you're seeing. So you're not truly seeing it clearly. And two people cannot truly meet if they're both seen through screens. And this is pretty much everybody. This is the world. This is our separation from God. So it's not like if you realize that you're part of this, yeah, everybody is. There's probably maybe a few dozen, a few hundred people in the world, on earth at least, that are truly can stay in that presence, that in the intensity of life. And the thing is, life is intense. When two people meet, that presence is so freaking strong that people cannot hold it. They have to look away. They have to project, whether it's sexual projections or ego projections or your judgment. They're all just projections. It's the inability to see them as they are. It's a scary place. What if they see you as you are? What if they see your vulnerability? It's scary. And to be able to stand there and look into somebody's eyes with your vulnerability, being seen and seeing them, this is evolution at its best. This is the path. This is the spiritual path. So essentially, we turn up the volume of reality. Most of us are operating at a 1 or 2, literally, out of 10. We're at a 1 or 2. That's how. So reality, so intense, we could not handle it. We had to start. As kids, we find these ways to disconnect, subtle ways. Subtle. When you begin to actually observe the way you disconnect, you're already beginning to transcend it. So the question is, how do you begin to turn the dial back up? And you'll probably want to do this slowly. So first, a lot of people start eating raw foods, and you have all this. You start removing these heavy foods from your life, and suddenly you turn the dial up from about a 2 to a 4. You're eating. Your body's cleaner, and you can feel your emotions that much more. Your awareness gets sharper, so suddenly you're at a 4 or 5, using the foods, which is good. But it really, really, really is only the first step. I promise you, there's so much more to it. And a lot of time, it gets subtler and subtler. So, I'd say now reality, and that's why when you start going raw, suddenly you see everything more clearly. It's like the trees. It's like, whoa, I never realized how beautiful that tree was. And suddenly those emotions that you don't want to feel, they get that much more intense. So, and that's where a lot of people stop. 4 or 5, life's pretty, you're already seeing reality more clearly than most people on earth. But there's ways to start to notch up more and more and more and more. 10 is essentially God. You're back to God. There's no more ego contractions. You just see it as it is. The expression's moving through you. So how do you get past that 5? Well, we start to begin the subtle practices. In meditation, if you want to wake up, a regular observer meditation is absolutely key. You have to do it. Like I said, there's these crises that evolve in our life, and they make us, reality gets so intense, and then we see the parts that we're holding on to, our egos, we're holding on so tight, we want control. We can't have reality as it is. It's too much. So let me just try to control it. And the funny thing is, shamans use drugs, and that essentially can be years of spiritual practice in a few hours. It can show you how you hold on, how you contract and say, no, too much. And that's intense. You turn the dial up. You actually probably turn the dial up past 10. You probably turn the dial up to 20. So when you turn the dial to 20, the ways you start to say no to reality become that much more intense, because it's 20. You can't escape it. And you have a contraction so strong, called a bad trip, you got to let go. You have to let go. Surrender, one of the main principles on the practice. Surrender to this experience. So then you become aware, maybe through meditation, maybe through a shamanic experience, crisis. Grace is what it is. The whole thing's grace. You become aware of a subtle way that you say no. And these are so subtle. They're hard to put into words. This whole process is hard to put into words. But let me try. And I'll just speak from experience. So for me, to be seen is intense. This stems from childhood. When someone's eyes are on me, there's a subtle contraction in which I truly cannot see them anymore, because that meeting was too intense. For whatever reason, as a child, I started, the connection with another human being became too much. And the thing is, the contraction, where we feel it in the body or the thoughts that arise, they're already symptoms of what we're not allowing ourselves to feel. So on the spiritual path, you know, there's a belief that love, you're supposed to feel love all the time, compassion all the time. No, those are the result of your spiritual practice, not the actual practice itself. So, a lot of people contract in their bodies. You feel it in your chest, and it's tight. You feel it in your stomach, and you feel tightness. Your digestion goes to, you can't digest food well. People their hands get very cold. Some people contract so hard, they have such a no to the intensity of reality, that their hands literally start to turn. You can see it. Their hands start to curl into a claw, like this, or they start to get very tight, their eyes open, it's like the deer in headlights. It's like, oh my goodness, no, get me out of here, it's too much. So you start to turn the dial up, and as you turn the dial up, you start to see the ways you say no, and it's intense. So just say yes to life. The scared feeling you feel, the intensity, the vulnerability. You have to say yes to that. You have to. It's part of life. You say yes to the good and the bad, and things are going to get a lot smoother. So things like anxiety, it's a symptom of saying no. Stress. Life is too much right now. I cannot handle it. Too much. I'm stressed. And then the thing is, when you contract, your body tightens. It's the nature of contraction, the separation of God. Your body becomes very tight, and the energy doesn't flow freely. And this is one of the reasons for a lot of physical ailments we experience. Of course, there's a physiological component, food we're putting in our body, but this is the reason prana stops flowing, and you have less energy. And when you begin the spiritual practice, you wake up energy, you have more energy. It's not just the food. It's the saying yes to life. It's saying yes to the intensity of life. So that is I'm just trying to put it into words. Hopefully you can begin to see these subtle aspects of existence. And you gotta stop thinking of it as me. It's happening to me. Because as long as you identify with it so much, just think about it as the way form is coming to existence. There's an experience, maybe there's a contraction, maybe there's an expansion. And so you start to see the karma of it. So you kind of start to open up your third eye and your crown chakra, which is why in the heart. So these, like I said in my chakra video, these are important. These are closed in a lot of people, but almost nobody, very few people have these open. And you need to start opening those as well. You need all of them open, every single one. Have a great day. Namaste. If you could do me a favor, if you could post in the comments section if you've had a mystical experience, if you've had a spiritual awakening, with or without drugs. I'm just curious to know who's watching these videos. It will help me tailor what I'm saying to more fit the audience. Thanks.